Welcome to the Clarity Games with your hosts Lynne, Elaine, and Greg. Let's welcome today's special guest, Shelagh O'Grady. Now let's play some Clarity Games. Game 6 is called It's All Connected. So for 1 to 2 minutes, player 1 shares how it is that they came to be here today playing this game. And then for 10 minutes, player 2 picks something from the story and asks how that came to be. Player 1 tells that story. The process continues until time is up. The other players listen for metaphors, language patterns, and feeling changes and report what they observed at the end of the game. And for 5 minutes, we'll discuss and share what we saw. So Shelagh, just as I start my timer, how is it that you came to be here today playing the Clarity Games with us?
Well, I suppose in the first instance, it's actually having known you from being on the Clarity certification training with Jamie. And over the years, we've interacted and got to know each other through that, and then outside of that as well. And it's a connection through realizing that we all are connected as well, and the feeling of that. But also, funnily enough, the day before you emailed about this, I'd been having a conversation with my business coach, because I have a business coach now. But and I'd been talking about how we'd had those conversations before around the book, Jamie's book, Clarity, and how I'd enjoyed that, and how maybe I could reach out to you to see if you were doing anything. So it was really funny. Anything. And I knew you were doing the Clarity Games because I'd spoken to Vanessa about it. And the next thing, the email came in what's the universe like? Your email came in my inbox. I was like, oh my God. You just wouldn't believe it. It's like, whoa. Except I'm always surprised, despite the fact I know that that's kind of how it works, but it still surprises me every single time. But yeah.
I love it. I also loved when you said over the years, because like I was saying before we got on this call, that the time is just flying by, like the fact that, it's been years, literally, since first connected. It feels like yesterday. So I'm curious, you mentioned meeting on CCT. How was it that you came to be on CCT in the first place?
Well, CCT, the one where we met, I was on that as a senior because I'd done it the year before. And at the end of the year before, I felt like I was in a position. I was like, if I could do this from where I am now, it would be amazing. And then I found out that there was a senior route, which I hadn't even been aware of before that. I don't know how I hadn't known, but I didn't. So it just felt like the next natural step to take to be on that. It just made sense. Nothing else made sense but to continue on that journey. So I was then on it as a senior.
And how did you get on to it to be as a junior?
As a junior level. I was part of. I used to be in Clarity Pro, Jamie's membership. So I used to do some of the Clarity Lives through that, and it was in the summer of 2020. There was a Clarity Live on which Jan and Chip Chipman were on, and there was just something about that particular experience of listening to those two that when then Jamie reached out, which she did actually, and if he hadn't, I probably would never have done it, about it. It just felt right to actually take that step and actually do the program. So yeah.
Do you remember how it is that you discovered Clarity Live or Clarity Pro, or even how you first became aware of Jamie Smart, maybe?
Well, how I first became aware of Jamie Smart was my brother was reading his book, Clarity. And at the time, I was just interested to see what it was that he was looking into. So I also got the book Clarity to read. But I'm going to confess, I read this book expecting to find steps. What are the steps to clarity? I thought, this book doesn't tell you anything. This book's got no steps. It was like, huh? And then, but I did actually sign up for his podcast and listen to his podcast and signed up for his emails. So it was really that without even though I didn't have a clue what the book was on about, I still felt drawn to it.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm curious about, you mentioned your brother was reading Clarity. I'm curious about what his journey has been like. Like, did he read it and also wonder where the steps were, and or has he continued on with any coaching related or clarity related stuff?
He was the same thing. Where are the steps? But he actually has gone more down the Michael Neal route. But he did have his own realization of it's all thought. So yeah. But it was him reading the Clarity book in the first instance that got me into it.
And thinking back to when, I guess you heard that your brother was reading this book, what was it about personal development, or I don't know, looking for answers or steps that sparked your interest in pursuing also reading that book?
Prior to probably reading that book, I was always thinking the answer to a lighter life, because I used to think life used to feel far much lighter, was going to be in the next book, in the next chapter, the next course, the next something, that there was something out there that could make my life feel like it used to feel, like it used to be lighter and it had become all heavy. So it was like constantly looking for something to make your life lighter.
I'm curious, when was that used to be lighter feeling? Was that like as a young adult, as a child? What period of time was that lightness first available or noticeable?
I mean, definitely as a child, I loved growing up. I was very, I suppose, lucky to have had what I think was, and obviously life has its ups and downs, but for me, I just felt safe in it. It was like, I just enjoyed life, basically. And in my teenage years, I probably started to feel that not quite fitting in type of feeling. And then so that'd go away for a while, I'd be fine. But gradually over life, that came and took over more and more, if that makes sense. So it got, the more I went through life and then through my career and stuff, I always felt like I needed to achieve something else to fit in. So I had to get the next promotion, the next qualification, the next whatever, the next pay rise in order to get somewhere. So it was me seeking in the outside world for something to make me fit in, really.
I'm curious how that all looks now that you've discovered clarity and the three principles, and are you back to that lightness that you felt as a child?
Yes, and sometimes it does feel heavy because you get caught up, but nowhere near like it was, because close to the surface is always that knowing that of who I really am, that foundation that's always there. But also, funny you should say that, because now looking back, because I think more and more falls away as the years go on from this understanding. But looking back, I can actually see that that lightness was there a lot more than I actually even realised it was. And I can see how, like everybody, when you get caught in that moment, when you think it's always been like this and it's always going to be like this, and oh my God, what can I get in order to make life better or whatever else? Those moments feel like they're longer than they are, and they're probably very short, actually. or mine probably were, but I just had this in a moment when you get caught up. I would think, oh, it was like this forever type of thing, and think that that was true, because that was the first thing for me for this understanding, was actually seeing how I was making it up, the rules about who I was, who I wasn't, who everybody else is, how the world works. And the more I see that in different areas of my life, the lighter it actually does get. But it's just knowing how it works. It's like, yeah.
Amazing. It's funny because as you refer to lightness, I mean, the first impression of it I get is like a weight, like light, heavy versus light, that kind of thing. But then I also see lightness as kind of like light, like a guiding light in the darkness, kind of like, when you find yourself in those heavy dark times, there's a sliver of light kind of ahead of you that you can follow and step into the lightness. Anyway, that's cool.
Yeah. And I think the more that I see that I am a light for other people, to show them that there is a glimmer of hope, that there's somewhere else to look. It's like the lighthouse showing you away from the rocks, that there's safer water, isn't it? It's yeah.
I love the lighthouse metaphor. I won't bore you with one of my favorite Stephen Covey stories, but it's about a battleship in a lighthouse. You can look it up.
All right.
Or if we have time later, I'll share. But
yeah.
I think that's a good place to wrap that up. Thank you so much, Sheila. And now we'll spend 5 minutes. And Lynne and Elaine, what did you notice about that conversation?
I noticed the lightness as she spoke about it, and would have been curious to know if then again, she didn't say it, so again, indeed, maybe not. But if the lightness is inversely proportionate to her feelings of fitting in. That's sort of kind of something that struck me, because she didn't actually mention the not fitting in later on, sort of thing. So seeing her sitting there in all of her glorious lightness, I just wondered how the fitting in was going.
Yeah, funny. I was even wondering if that looks important.
Oh, maybe not. Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
What I loved at the beginning is when Sheila said, the realization that we're all connected. And I'm surprised, despite knowing how it works, it's still surprising that things pop up and you're like, hey, look at that. It was so nice.
Yeah.
But I really got this feeling. How many minutes were you going, Greg? There, about 16 or something?
We were under the 10 minutes for that.
Oh, okay. Because the feeling I had, I'm just sitting here. If I could have closed my eyes and nodded off, it would have been absolutely lovely. It was so nice.
Yeah. And I loved the. Gosh, if I had to do this exercise, I can't remember all of that, and I don't know what's gone on, and I couldn't remember any of that. But just the sharpness of the images that she put across. While she was speaking, even going back in time, like the answer was as you spoke, Greg. She had the answer was there. It was clear, sharp image of how it was, and contrasting. Like again, going back to the not fitting in thing, but hearing and listening and feeling Sheila speak, just the lightness about it. So I just didn't feel like I was fitting in. Again, that
it's interesting when we're talking about lightness and fitting in. What came to me was, how like formless light is. So like no matter what the shape of something, like the light can fit whatever shape. So the more light you are, less relevant a shape, like fitting in. You can fit in anywhere if you're pure light.
If you're light.
I don't know. And then the other thing that came out was just like, this game is called It's All Connected, but just the like, if you think about the events in our lives that put us on a new course or a new trajectory, like, sometimes they're profound, huge moments that change everything. Other times it's an email from Jamie Smart that invites you to a weekend Clarity Live thing, and you're like, oh yeah, maybe I'll go to that. And next thing you know, your life is way off in a whole new direction, and not only, like, one person's life, but all the lives that Jamie or us are touching on a regular basis. And then I just have the, I don't know, image of all these like crisscrossing lines of people's lives and how they seemingly cross by fluke, but then getting back to what we were talking about earlier, like, the Sheila was thinking of us and we were thinking of her simultaneously, and here we are. Like, how is that a fluke, or is that some kind of divine intervention, or I don't know, whatever, synchronicity,
Magic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How was the experience for you, Sheila?
That was a really lovely, relaxing, restful experience, actually. And the fact that my answers did appear to be just clear and I could see them was because I was just so in the moment, not caught up in any ideas of what should or shouldn't be happening and how am I coming across, or how's and it's such a contrast to when I actually have done the exercise as part of the Jamie weekends, and it wasn't like that at all. Oh, dear.
That's good to hear. All right, well, thank you. Are you up for another round?
Yeah, see what happens.
All right. So this one's called Unicorns and Fairies.
Ooh.
So for 2 to 3 minutes, player one, which is you, Sheila, imagine something impossible they'd love to have happen, like a really big dream or fantasy. And then for 15 minutes, the other players have a conversation about what they're curious about or want to know or want clarification on. They agree to one question to ask player one and ask it. Player one answers, and the other players do another round of discussing and ask another question. This repeats for 15 minutes. And then we'll wrap up with 2 to 3 minutes of player one sharing any insights or shifts they've had. Right. So let me start the timer. So first is 2 to 3 minutes, Sheila. Imagine something impossible that you would love to happen, like a big dream or a fantasy. What comes to mind? Dreaming big, unicorns and fairies.
Yeah. Yeah, if we don't often, well, I don't often do that. I might think, oh, what would I like to have done by the end of the week or month or year at the most, maybe, but something that maybe is absolutely impossible.
Something that we'll all think, man, is she bonkers?
Yeah, it makes us laugh. So the thing that keeps coming back, because I was trying to see whether I could think of something that wasn't kind of connected to, I was going to say work, but maybe it's not actually really. I would love to be, I'm laughing now, but I always say it, a renowned speaker, somebody that people invite to either do keynote speeches or just speak at events or just talk and facilitate, because I just love the way, like, the room lights up sometimes when you're having those conversations. So yeah, actually, me being somebody that people would want to have at the events to be the keynote speaker or the pre-dinner speaker, or yeah.
Love it. I had a very clear image of like the marquee outside of a big theater. Tonight's speaker, Shelagh O'Grady, and like a huge lineup around the corner. All right, so Lynne, Elaine, and I will take some time to figure out what we're curious about, and then we'll come back to you with a single question to ask you.
Yeah, I guess it's my usual one that always pops into my head when I hear these big, so-called big dreams. Like, first thing I think is, so no big deal, huh? So what's stopping you?
I love the laughter before, like just
Yeah.
she imagined it, and then she got giddy about it, and it was like it wasn't like that felt like that would be a dream, and it's possible. Like it's not, and it was almost like the laugh was almost in spite of the initial thinking of the impossibility of it. It was so I'm curious about, now that she's spoken that out into the world, does it seem as impossible as it seemed when it was still inside of her head?
Yeah. And also noticed how, despite asked almost to having been asked almost to think of something that's impossibly ridiculous. And then she said, did you see, she went, oh, well, this one keeps coming back to me. I mean, like, what? So it's like there, it's already there.
Yeah, and I pictured, Greg, when you mentioned that marquee, and that bubble of laughter came back, and I was just imagining all these people in that marquee with Shelagh with that bubble of laughter and her lightness and what she's bringing to that room, and just felt illuminated to me.
Yeah.
It's so nice. What am I curious about? I'm kind of curious how long she's had that longing, because it really feels like a longing. It feels like a longing.
Yeah, I like that question because it kind of combines what Elaine was saying about it being there and coming back. So why don't you ask her that, Lynne?
Yeah, Shelagh, when you were talking about it, it just came to you in this, your enthusiasm and your bubble of laughter there. So we're curious, how long have you had the longing to be a renowned speaker and bring yourself into these huge spaces of people?
Probably a long time, actually, but never thought it was something that I'd see people speak, and sometimes it wasn't the best experience in the world, and then other people would really light up the room and bring the room to life. And I used to see that and think, oh, I'd love to do that. And over the years, I've had the opportunity to do it on smaller, like in smaller rooms or whatever else, or in smaller opportunities. And for a while, I was a watchers coach, so I did used to facilitate meetings. So I did used to, and some of them, it was that lovely feeling in the room, even back then. But it's it is that feeling when you're lost in a way, and by lost I mean like the identity's lost. You're just enjoying the experience of being and connected with a room full of people, and just that energy of that room. To me, that is a beautiful feeling, and I think it's something that I probably have wanted, and it's probably the connection, in all fairness. But only more recently I've probably seen that actually growing up I was told I was too loud, making people's ears hurt, be quiet. And I think it's more realizing that once I saw that maybe that actually had affected me, maybe. Because I think that's the great thing about this understanding, and the bad thing, if there was a bad thing, is you don't choose what you see. You gradually see stuff and it comes through or it doesn't. And some things disappear on their own. And yeah, I think there's always been a voice wanting to come out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
The three of us will figure out our next question for you, Sheila, so you can sit back and relax.
Maybe you can both think of what the question is based on what I heard Sheila say. And I was kind of trying to get into her shoes and be her and sort of thinking, but also sort of thinking, well, what would I say in a similar sort of within a similar sort of desire, let's say. And Sheila said, she was talking about, she's done it in sort of smaller kind of environments with fewer people, but what she really appreciated was the feeling of connection within a certain space and within a certain group of people. And then she said, I want to do that. Now, if that had been me, because I was expecting her to say, I want to be able to do that, but she didn't say that. So that sounds to me, I don't know what the question is, but it sounds to me like the job is already done. So I'm kind of wondering if the job, if I'm going to take it as job done, what's in that space between Sheila just speaking here with us now and then being that person in that connected space with all those wonderful people?
Yeah. Well, it kind of gets back to what you were curious about the first go around too, like what's getting in the way.
Yeah.
And
but just giving it like a gap idea is sort of, it takes the negative bit about something being in the way. It's just something,
and I think for me, what you picked up on is it like, and what Sheila said about being told to be quiet or, hurting people's ears and stuff. It's like, it's not a capability issue. Like you said, like, it's not like I can't do this. It's like a permission issue. Like I'm not allowed to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder if the question could be something like, what would happen if you had permission or gave yourself permission to do it?
Okay.
What would be possible? Any thoughts, Lynne?
Yeah, well, she also shared that to a degree she's been doing this already. So if we go back to it being a big dream and a fantasy, clearly that wasn't enough. That doing it with a small group of people wasn't enough. So there's something around what's gonna make it feel like she fulfilled that dream or fantasy, knowing that this is something. What she said was about, allowing her voice to be heard, making her voice heard. Which is, you put that big top image in my head, Greg. I've just got this great big tent in my head, and I can't get that out now. So I can just see her there. So I'm not sure what the question is. Yeah, what's going to elevate it to that dream fantasy level based on what she's already done and bring that feeling.
When you were just talking about the 10 stuff, I thought the clarity of the marquee just kind of came into a little more clarity. And it's like, featured speaker, Shelagh O'Grady, opening act, Adele.
Cool, we love a collaboration around here. So what's a good question?
May I make a suggestion?
Yeah, you go ahead, Elaine. You ask her a question.
No, not to ask a question, but
Oh.
maybe if Sheila could answer based on what she's heard
Yeah,
Yeah,
without
fair enough.
choosing a question. Yeah.
sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dealer's choice. Go for it.
Yeah, yeah, because it is obviously very insightful hearing other people talk about what you've said, because sometimes that's the first time the words come out or in that way. So to have it, it's like almost like a sounding board, isn't it?
Mhm.
And when Elaine was saying about the gap, the block used to almost be a block. I didn't know what it was. And now it feels like it's just well-worn practice. I'm just, instead of following other people's expectations, I'm now following my own expectations of how I expect myself to react or act or behave based on past behavior rather than what I can actually just do. And the practicing now needs to be practice to get me towards that rather than practicing the stuff to keep me stuck. So instead of the well-worn routines and practices and behaving like following I can't do that. Just what can I do? Actually, let's see. So kind of that was what was coming up for me when you were all speaking, was I've just been putting on an outfit that I didn't fit. Yeah. Which is funny actually, because you talked about photographs, and I do go to a monthly photo shoot. And this month I took this mask with me.
I've been looking at that and going, what is that?
With it. I got this in Barcelona absolutely years ago. And then pictures of it being taken off, because I think it's that whole idea of wearing a mask or wearing a suit that's not yours, isn't it? And coming out from behind it or taking the mask off, which is kind of what I've been seeing big style, which is why this was at Bodnant Gardens on Friday, and that was like one of my props that I took. And funny enough, I don't know to take props because I never know what the theme's going to be for my photos, because I think I can't use them anyway. But yeah, so it was the masks this time. So yeah, that's quite.
It's so funny because as I was asking myself, like, what am I curious about? The mask kept coming up. I'm curious about that mask on the wall. And I'm like, I can't ask about the mask because it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. And then here we are 5 minutes later, you're like, that reminds me about this mask over here.
Oh dear, yeah.
Can we ask another one?
Yeah, go for it.
I do have a curiosity, and it's about you mentioned connection and energy, Sheila, and the fact that you've spoken to small groups before. And what I'm super curious to know is, what group of people would you love to be connected with that you're not right now?
Yeah. So it's funny because I'm loving the energy of all the people that I have connected with over the last number of years. And the last year in particular, I've been going out to more networking and things like that. But the thing that I'm drawn to is I really want to go back into the corporate world, but not as an employee, but just as somebody who can help people to maybe see what I've seen sooner than I saw it, so that they don't. Because I think what I've really seen now, when I look back, and it's something that I really never let myself see. I'd never have even admitted it because I'm not the sort of person. I think I burnt out, which is why I probably took the redundancy.
Mm.
But if me in my me in my world that I created, that was not a thing. That would not have been a thing. So I didn't even let myself see it. And that's kind of the mask bit as well. It's because when I was asking people what their ideas would be of an image of somebody who was burnt out, and they were talking about people with a head in the hands and all like completely disheveled or whatever else. And when I think about it, I wasn't any of those things. I was completely like my energy was completely like used up or whatever else. But on the outside, it wasn't obvious, other than probably some of my behavior probably wasn't great because I probably was a bit more snappy and all the rest of it. But looking back, I know that I was burnt out, but wouldn't admit it.
Mm.
And there's probably other, and one thing, it wasn't even, I didn't even know it was a possibility because it wasn't in my world, if that made, so I didn't even recognize that I would have been. And that's kind of where I want to actually help people, is to help them see what road they could be going down and see it sooner than I did.
Mm.
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 Yeah, so on one hand, there's like an idea. I resonate with a lot of what you say there, Sheila. And the idea of actually you it's a kind of a paradox if you think about it. Like when we're often living very much on a day-to-day in the moment, we don't actually even realize what's going on. And like that becomes your normal.
Yeah.
So, just being totally burnt out, overwhelmed and exhausted is like normal. And we kind of, without sort of perhaps someone to help us, to point us to some kind of awareness of what actually is going on by comparing or looking or checking things over time or whatever, it's sometimes for many people, it can be very, very, very difficult.
Mm.
And I guess with perhaps difficulties with a lack of understanding, that because we sometimes think, well, this is okay if normal. Of course I'm like this. Work is bloody awful. What do we expect it to be? Because it's out there.
Mm.
But that's normal too. So we just like miss it completely and kind of carry on being burnt out to the end of our days, sort of thing, until something happens, and we realize it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
I'll put my hand up and say, me too.
Yeah.
Mm.
And well, me too. Yeah.
Realize, same thing. Like I was definitely burned out, depressed, all kinds of other things, and didn't until years later realize, oh, yeah, that's what was going on there.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
No wonder life was so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But while you're in it, you just, oftentimes just don't see it at all.
No.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I think, in 2007, I quit my job during a restructuring stuff, but it was like, if there'd been somebody at the company that was like a mental health professional or a clarity coach or whatever, all of a sudden, here's this guy who's just, for lack of a better phrase, throwing away his 11-year career. And for what? Like, somebody needs to talk to this guy and find out what's going on, instead of just like, all right, on your way.
See you. Yeah.
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 Anyway, so interesting.
And isn't it lovely how Sheila was talking, like both you and I, Greg, and I'm quite sure Lynne would pretty rapidly jump on the same train at some, recall some point in her life in a similar way. Like, Sheila, you've got gold in your hands. You're three people straight on, oh yeah, all right, here we are. And all three of us, at least I guess, we're kind of guessing, at least I'm, where we've done a lot of work on ourselves, but we've still had experiences when. And I, for one, sometimes dip back into that.
Yeah.
So, gosh, Sheila, you got a lot of stuff to be doing. Good on you. Yeah.
As we wrap this one up, Sheila, anything you want to share in terms of insights or shifts or next steps, whatever you want to share?
One thing I'll share, and it's how I'm noticing how much lighter I actually do feel, and how much closer I am, and closer is a strange word to say it, but to the knowing that I am okay. And it is amazing how there is always something to see through and learn. And that remembering that I don't know is important, because a pattern for me that shows up a lot, but I'm actually managing to see through it more quickly, is that looking for the right way to do something, that there's got to be a right way. And that is one of the biggest obstacles that holds me back, because obviously there isn't a right way to do something. And when you're looking for the right way, you don't do any way, because you think, I'm obviously going to choose the wrong way. If there's a right way, there's a wrong way. And that is one of my biggest blocks or has been, I should say, because it's probably gone from block to hurdle to maybe gate. Maybe it's a gate now that I can open, as opposed to something I have to jump over. But it is, I can see that more clearly actually with this today, how more clearly I am seeing life, actual life.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today
Thank you
on the
so
Clarity
much.
Games. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you, very welcome.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you. See you soon,
you.
hopefully.
Yeah. I'll need probably a few days to get you the recording, but you'll get it in your inbox before too long.
Super.
That'll be fine, thank you.
Yeah.
I shall.
And keep us
But yeah,
posted.
no.
We're in the journey now.
I know, yeah. It's taken me a long
wow.
time to get to that burnout piece, to be honest. It's funny make you laugh now, actually, because before I got to that, I kept saying it felt like I was I shouldn't laugh, because it's probably true. I was a witch in a former life. And it feels like the feeling of having to be visible and post things and say things was feeling like I must have been a witch in a former life, and I'm terrified of being burnt at the stake. That's exactly what it felt like, in all honesty, which is quite ridiculous, really. But now it was leading me probably to the burnout, to be honest with you. Yeah.
We're back to it's all connected.
Yeah.
Wow.
For what the image that's come to me in terms of the burnout is kind of like a candle or whatever that's been snuffed out. That's the burnout, like, and then the rebirth or the respark or the lightness, like a new light. Like you're I don't know, like if I think about a candle that burns itself out because it's like it burns down to the bottom, that's where you were, and where you are now, it's like you're a brand new candle that's infinitely, a never ending, can't be burned out.
Like one of those little electric ones that you put your fingers on.
A little
and
battery powered one.
Yeah. It's one of those.
Awesome.
Oh,
Right,
awesome.
thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
You.
Thank
We'll see
you.
soon.
Yeah.
That was
That's
a
great.
very nice experience. So thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Right.
Great to have you.
Yeah. Speak to you soon.
All right,
Take it
see you
easy.
guys.
Soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for playing along. We'll see you next time on the Clarity Games.